What up on Monday, June 26th? It's episode 246 of the 359 podcast. It's your boy, DJ Bobby Hill, and I'm here with Roger Chen and Ben Fox Rubin for the recording of the 359, where you're going to hang out with us while we ramble about some news headlines for 4 relevant minutes and then spin you off into the ether unless you want to hang out and chat. Guys, what's going on today?
Do we have to pay the King of the Hill people now?
I guess so.
Crap.
Yeah. And Danny, don't worry. There's a show today. There's going to be a show every day until, I don't know, the earth crumbles.
Well, until we go on hiatus.
Until we go on hiatus, which may be sometime soon.
We're still discussing, but there might be a short summer break since some of us won't be around.
Yeah.
So
Some of us get to take vacation. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. That sounded less.
Who would that be, Roger?
That sounded less ominous than what Roger just said.
I'm not taking vacation, by the way. I'm just working out of the West Coast.
Uh-huh.
So still working.
It sounded like you were preparing to fire me. We're going to take a break.
Is that how you took it?
Some of us won't be around.
Jeez. Wow, that is... I mean, that's you, man. That is not me. I
thought it was
trying
funny.
To be.
All right.
All right, back on track.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about the original iPhone, or we posted our original iPhone review today with special annotations. You should definitely check it out. Ben and I are going to share a couple memories about where we were, maybe, when the original iPhone
Sure,
launched.
you can share yours.
I can share mine.
I was a little late to the smartphone game, but fine.
This is 10 years ago, so I'm really trying to reach back deep to remember what the heck it was all
back
about.
in your youth.
And also, I did want to, this is a bit controversial, I want to make the argument that the original iPhone wasn't quite as revolutionary as we all think. Feel free to disagree with me. We're going to be talking as well a little bit about Silicon Valley, the show, which wrapped up its 4th season yesterday. Don't worry, we're not going to go too heavy into spoilers. I think we're going to talk a little bit about just our general impressions.
Yeah.
Questions about the season. Obviously talking about TJ Miller's exit.
Yep.
So if you have any questions about this, we're going to take this a little bit easy today. Leave it in the comment section. Brian will pick out the best, and we will get to them in 3 minutes and 59 seconds.
And stand by. I'm just setting up our little timer here. And here we go in 3, 2.
Welcome to the 359. I'm Roger Chen.
I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
To commemorate the upcoming 10th anniversary of the iPhone launch, CNET has republished our review of the original iPhone. The anniversary, just to be clear, is on Thursday. We've got a bunch of stories kind of leading up to the anniversary. You should check it out on CNET. But we wanted to talk a little bit about our own, I guess, history with the iPhone, or I guess more specifically mine.
Yeah, yours.
Do you not remember what happened during the iPhone launch, the original launch?
I mean, I wasn't a tech reporter back then, so like my first iPhone and my first smartphone was the iPhone 4S.
Okay, wow.
So it was a little later for me. I was rocking flip phones.
Well, I mean, to be fair, my first, the one I owned was also a 4S. I was also an Android user before then, but I did have the original iPhone. I actually had it, I think, a day or two before it actually launched. So
why aren't you special?
Thank you. I was. No, I worked at the time, Dow Jones News Wires and Wall Street Journal. So we got, I mean, Walt Mossberg obviously had the review unit for the Journal, but I had one for Dow Jones as well. And yeah, it was like the first time that my beat seemed kind of cool because everyone kept coming over to like check out the phone. I wasn't really supposed to show it for a day or two, but it's kind of neat. Even when it had launched, when I was at bars, people were like coming up to check it out.
I definitely remember doing it. My friend looked really cool. It was very interesting. But yeah, it took me a couple of years until I actually dove into it. But wanted to ask you, what did you think of the phone? Like, was it this revolutionary product? Like, you were like, oh my God, this is changing my life?
Yeah, well, look, there are certain things about it that are revolutionary. I can't really dismiss the fact that in terms of the user interface, the pinch to zoom, the fact that it's all touchscreen, it's not, there aren't any buttons. I tested tons and tons of smartphones before then, Palm Trios and Windows mobile phones or Windows Phone. I can't remember what they called them back then. They kept rebranding it. Blackberries, obviously. I was a heavy Blackberry user for years. And this phone was just completely different. The only thing is, I would quibble with exactly how revolutionary that particular one is. I argue that the following model, the iPhone 3G, 3GS, 3S, whatever, the second one, was better. It came out with the App Store, which really kind of opened up what you could do with it.
That was really...
The price is a lot lower. If you remember, this original iPhone was like $700. It was ran on 2G, so it was super slow. And it really did like iPhone. I mean, it did calendar, email, the browser. All of that was fantastic. Like it definitely stepped up what a smartphone could be. But in terms of like really opening it up to what this is, I feel like the second generation iPhone was actually a bit more revolutionary.
Yeah, and now it's basically the same product year after year.
All right, just with the little time we have, I just wanted to talk about our Silicon Valley, which wrapped up its 4th season yesterday. What'd you think?
I thought it was a great season finale. I kind of didn't realize it was the season finale while I was watching it. And I was like, wow, this is a really good episode. And then I realized afterwards it was because they were wrapping the whole thing up. A little sad to see TJ Miller go. Personally, I don't know how the show is going to stand up without him because he's like the catalyst for so much action.
Although you saw this season, they kind of sidelined him fairly early on. And the way he left the show, I mean, he was kind of a plot device, right? He kind of brought back Gavin.
Yeah.
And that was really it. And
All
he
right,
just sort of
watch for spoilers.
Sorry. Then he just sort of faded away. Sorry about that.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, I would have liked to see a more impressive exit, but maybe that opens the door for him to come back for like an arc or something like that.
The other thing, when we talked to some of the stars of the show early on before the season began, they sort of hinted at more sex and also more women, more female representation. Yeah. I mean, there was the sex, definitely.
There was some sex, mostly off camera.
Right, but they were somewhat critical to the plot. Mm-hmm. In terms of actual like female representation on the show, though, it was still kind of glaring, right?
We were talking about this before. There was actually less female representation in this season.
The hacker character was introduced, and then
Monica didn't do that much.
And then Monica didn't do that much. So I don't know. Anyways, too much. We don't have enough time to talk about it. But for more on these stories, check us out on CNET. I'm Roger Chang.
I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
Thanks for listening.
Abby in the chat says, I still remember this fabulous tech from the out-of-the-box design and the idea of Steve Jobs. We got a couple of reminiscence. I'm glad we don't have Alfred on the show today because it was made before he was born. So at least we have some relevant parties in the room.
It is nice to get Roger on the show because usually Alfred is too busy dancing and
breakdancing and challenging Tom Holland to dance-offs.
It's
and hanging out with him actually this weekend. He was at a junket.
Okay.
With the Spider-Man cast.
He was actually hanging out with Tom Holland.
No.
Okay, thank God.
I saw the tweet. It was like this cramped panel, and he was sort of sitting in like the 4th or 5th row.
Okay.
But that's kind of cool.
Right.
I don't know. Anyway, so
send along your comments, and we want to hear how you remember. Where literally the title of the show. Where were you? When the original iPhone came out. I remember I was just about to actually start working for this company.
I mean, it was 10 years ago. It was a long time.
Yeah. The thing that I like about the review, by the way, so we review our own review with genius annotation, which I thought was really smart. Great. One of the things that it mentions in the review that I got a kick out of was it shines as an iPod. Like that was one of its main functions was to be an MP3 player,
which back then was definitely an appeal, right? Like that's what you thought of Apple when you thought of their products, right?
That was easily my biggest sell point just as a user because I don't remember the model or the make, but it was some crappy flip phone with like a blue racing stripe on it. Mm-hmm. I'm sure someone else had it, but I remember just wanting I hate carrying an iPod and a phone.
Yep.
I'm gonna consolidate this, and that was a sell point for me.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to point out from the review was Kent German, who wrote the original review, said it didn't live up to the hype, which he was kind of right and kind of wrong about.
Yeah.
Is that it wasn't there were a lot of things missing from the original that kind of maybe justified that explanation, but at the same time, it really was a revolutionary device that changed so many different things.
It changed the way we looked at what a smartphone can be. Because before then, they were kind of clunky. They were harder to use. It was definitely more for sort of white collar workers, folks who didn't mind like tapping the tiny little icons on the tiny screens that were given them. Didn't mind typing on physical keyboards. And there were a lot of companies that kind of poo-pooed the whole idea of the iPhone, right? There were a lot of companies.
Steve Ballmer, famously.
Right. The Palm CEO at Colgan was like, Steve Jobs doesn't know what, he doesn't know what the smartphone business is like. So there's a lot of skepticism going into that launch. And then, granted, it was a really expensive phone, right? It was, at least for that first generation, I felt it was definitely more of a status symbol. Mm-hmm. It didn't really hit mainstream awareness not mainstream availability until really the second generation when the price dropped and they introduced the subsidy, so the phone wasn't like $700.
You could probably argue that the iPhone single-handedly was responsible for like people just staring directly into their phones for way too long. Like even like while they're sitting across from their date at dinner, while they're at a park, or they're at the zoo, beach, whatever.
Think about where we are now and the things that we can't even imagine being without that are just standard fare anymore. Like you didn't really have video on the original iPhone. It was physically possible, but it was hoops to jump through to get it to happen. The idea of that front-facing camera, not there.
Right.
Flash on your camera, not there. And now it's like, oh my God, like that's kind of the fun part is thinking about, we thought this was so fantastic. Like I'm speaking generalities. People thought it was so fantastic. Right. The screen and it's colorful, and it's basically like when Windows first launched with the GUI.
It was a 3.5-inch screen, or how big was that display?
It's not very big.
It was like...
It looked amazing.
At the time, it looked massive.
At the time, it was like this revelation as a phone, because it was this touchscreen.
Right.
But at the same time, you look back at it now, and it looks pretty clunky.
Oh,
Eli says, Roger, it was $500 with subsidies.
Okay, so, well, no, that's the thing. There wasn't a subsidy for the original iPhone. Actually, it was a profit-sharing model that they had with AT&T. They would actually take a cut. So there was actually no subsidy for that original phone. The subsidy came in, I think, like 6 months later when they started realizing that is way too much for people to spend on phones, because before that, for most consumers, they were spending pretty much nothing or, $50 on a phone, right? Because it was subsidized. They were cheap flip phones or, quick messaging devices, and they were very cheap. So to go from paying nothing to paying $500,
right,
that's a huge jump. Nowadays, like we don't even blink at paying $1,000 for a phone anymore.
Yuck.
It's crazy, but back then it was definitely different.
So, do you remember when the phone escaped the AT&T world? Because I remember that was one of the critical reasons that I didn't get it.
I feel like it was like 3 or 4 years later.
That's why I jumped over to AT&T, between that and the fact that CBS gets a little discount there.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
You get a little perk. That's fine.
Before we move any more forward, I want to kind of revisit some other people's memories in the chat.
And
I had a Samsung something, but I don't remember what it was.
That's because I had my company basically give me a BlackBerry, and then I dropped my own phone service and just used the company one for a while. And then I had the original iPhone. I had to send it back. Obviously, it was just a review unit, so I only had it for a month or so. But yeah, and then like I after that I would get every new version for like a month, but I never actually owned one until like you. I think I bought the 4S.
So
the original one.
When I was at Dow Jones and the Wall Street Journal, they gave us BlackBerries, and during rare instances when there was like a breaking story and I had to be like out on the scene, having that physical keyboard was clutch.
Yeah.
There was no way I was going to be able, and granted, this is like very specific for reporters, but there was no way I was going to be able to like write several paragraphs to submit.
Although
I know people can do it.
I do it now. Yeah.
I don't
In fact,
really like
I can
doing
actually
it.
almost by memory now.
Seriously?
Touch type on my
I see
keyboard.
people doing that like when I'm doing interviews.
I'm not quite good at it. Like our intern last year, Sam, she could do it really well.
Yeah.
This is a lot of the younger folks are basically born and raised on a touch keyboard, right? So
isn't that funny? Because like I remember when I was going to school, it was mandatory to learn how to type, on a keyboard.
Oh yeah.
I learned that in middle school.
Do you think there's ever going to be like a class where they teach you how to type on a non-tactile?
They're going to teach you how to speak
but how
in
would
emoji.
you do that? Because it's like the
'Cause they're all
keyboard size,
different.
exactly.
Yeah.
The screen sizes are all different. Like,
I guess not. That's kind of a silly. But
By
it
the
was
way,
just
the-
No,
this is where we
it'll
are
happen.
now.
by the way, the Verizon iPhone went on sale in 2011. So
It sounds like sort of around
4
the time
years,
that I got it.
4 years.
Yeah, because I had the 4S for a couple of years, and then I switched over to the 6, which I still have.
You probably got it that year, but like in the fall when they introduced the 4S. Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Matthew Datcher says, what about the time the iPhone 3G wasn't actually on a 3G network?
Ooh. We're talking about that, was that AT&T? Was that an AT&T blast?
I think so. The way I personally remember it correctly, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
People
The
still
network-
stuck with it, though. I mean,
well,
like,
because-
there were a lot of
Whoopsie
early
daisy.
Because the
adopters.
phone was freaking awesome.
Right, and and early adopters were super into this. Was something?
No,
that
it was
really
it was
different.
really, and AT&T took a brunt of it. Like they went into full crisis communications mode after that. Like it was a big black eye for them. Just the fact that service really was terrible. It couldn't handle the sheer amount of traffic that those iPhones
right,
were
and
pulling.
calls would drop too.
Right.
Like the phone calling function, which is like why you have a phone,
Right.
or at least it used to be, wasn't that good either.
Yep.
Kent mentions that in his story.
Yeah, I mean, look, even I would argue even now, like in terms of phone antenna technology, that it's never been like the cutting edge. Actually, a lot of Android phones are a lot better at that stuff.
All right, Garrett in the chat says 10 years later, has the iPhone progressed enough? Isn't that the question of the hour?
Yeah.
Isn't that what we're working on
I think-
behind
Aren't
the
we
curtain
going
here?
I think we're gonna get our answer in September or October when iPhone.
I'm preparing
10, whatever.
myself to be disappointed.
I think we all are.
I think it's gonna be a big shift from what we've seen over the past 3 years.
So the rumors I heard is they're going to add a new port for a headphone on it.
oh my god, yes.
Don't
Just-
bait. Don't bait.
They're gonna call it. They're gonna call it Headphone Classic. It's gonna be awesome.
They can market that for an extra $100.
You know what though? It's look.
100.
Their problem is when the first iPhone came out, there was zero market share. They had nothing to lose, so they're going to go all out. Right now, they've got a massive market share. They've got a base of millions of users, and when you create for a base of millions of users, you can't be as nimble. You can't take the
You're totally right.
Risk.
It's just
That's
it's a
the
little
issue.
sad to see it not only as a tech reporter but as just like a regular consumer
Sure.
of technology.
Yeah.
That and one would assume that that's how Apple may eventually someday get beaten out.
Yeah.
That some nimble competitor is going to take those chances that Apple just refuses to.
Oh, yeah.
It's possible. I mean, like I don't see
you
it happening anytime
You see
soon.
these innovations from other phone companies all the time, right? Like wireless charging or
Mods.
exactly. I mean, the problem is they don't do as well.
That's
Right,
the
that's
thing
the
is
issue.
that that killer thing hasn't really come to the
Yeah.
fore quite yet. I might argue that like Google Assistant may be at least the start of it, because boy is Google Assistant way better than Siri.
Yeah.
And if people really start interacting with their phones in that way a lot more, then that could be a really that could be something that really hobbles the iPhone eventually.
Eli in the chat says, by the way, I remember that the time mostly everyone agreed that the iPhone was so limited there were table specs comparison with a rock. Seriously, I don't know about that one. I don't remember that view.
I don't remember that at all.
That's a pretty good line.
That's rough, man.
That's tough.
All right, we should probably cover a little bit of Silicon Valley before we wrap it up for the day. I don't know anything about the show.
Okay.
It's
I'm not-
great. You should watch
should
it.
watch
So
It's funny.
I'm just slow on all things because you guys keep me
Other
here.
than-
So
Other
Unless
than The
it's the
Walking
80s. Wait, by the way, speaking of the 80s, have you watched Glow yet?
actually, yes, I did start Glow this weekend.
I binge watched
the
the whole
first
thing.
2 episodes.
Oh.
Okay,
I did all I just spent the weekend watching it. It was pretty amazing.
it is great. Yeah.
As a former wrestling fan, pro wrestling fan, really appreciated like that they actually treated it with respect. It wasn't like it was an afterthought or
Sure. I have
You
a lot
know-
of friends who are interested in that. I don't know much about wrestling. I like Allison Brie. I like Mark Maron. And they've kind of given me like a bit of a precursor education into what it's really about.
Yeah.
Because I know nothing about the history.
you
So
kind
that's
of
kind
get
of fun.
yeah, it gets
it's also,
deeper
it's-
into it as the show goes on.
I was going to say, as of right now, it's not that relevant in the first couple of episodes. You don't see a broadcast or anything.
right.
It's all still behind the scenes.
Yes, and it kind of is like that for a while. But I love the soundtrack, the 80s music. At one point, they incorporate Stan Bush's Dare from the Transformers movie in a really awesome way.
You got the touch.
That's
Different.
You got the
Yeah.
touch. Yeah. Anyway,
That's the Stan Bush song I know.
all right.
I thought we were going to talk about Silicon Valley.
Sorry.
You guys
All
are
right, let's
like
get back on
going
topic.
on
Silicon
about-
Valley.
I haven't
Predictions
watched
for
Glow.
next season and what's going to happen without TJ.
I feel like there was a bit of a reset. Like we're going almost back to status quo at
Yeah,
the very end,
that's a good
right?
point.
Between Gavin and Pied Piper,
Right.
Like
That's true. I hadn't thought
after
of
all,
that,
after
but
all,
that's true.
after all the drama throughout the whole season, the arc with Gavin leaving, it just
You've now set it up for the classic Gavin versus what's the main character?
I was gonna say Thomas Middleditch. I can't
Thomas
remember his
Middleditch.
can't remember his character's name right now.
Right, but anyway, those two characters potentially fighting it out.
Yeah.
So there's, I mean, the opportunities for the show to keep going in that direction and figuring that whole thing out could be
Yes.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because they kind of felt like they were.
Wait. Should we give a spoiler alert?
Oh,
yeah, I mean like a
yeah,
vague spoiler
mild
alert.
spoilers. I
We're,
was just
we're
gonna
trying
say,
to avoid spoilers.
I was just gonna say, like in terms of his character, it was almost like a pseudo Breaking Bad transformation. Like you can see him
Yeah.
being corrupted throughout the season and sort of finding a little bit of redemption there at the end.
Yeah,
So-
but only a little.
Only a little bit.
I kind of liked like the bad version of that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Well,
that
the
was-
thing of it is, like, as you're watching him get more corrupted, like, he was getting more self-destructive. Like,
His name is Richard Hendricks.
Richard Hendricks.
God.
Like, why did we brain fart there?
Richard Hendricks is here.
Oh yeah, that was. Do you
was
want to talk?
from-
Do you want to talk about your interaction with Middleditch,
Right.
Mr.
So I
Middleditch?
bumped into, which by the way, I didn't remember his real name, so I bumped into him at a Numpang
it was a sandwich store.
sandwich shop, and I was like, Richard Hendricks, what's up? Which is probably like really bad to do.
You're like
right?
sounding as
that's
bro-ish
such
as possible.
Such a faux pas whenever coming up to an actor and not even calling them by their first name. But
Right.
I said hi to him and was just like, "Hey, I'm with CNET. You know, can I give you my card? Whatever." It was pretty lame
And awkward.
Yeah, and
Appropriate.
it didn't.
Yeah.
And he was just as awkward from the very little that he actually said. He seemed pretty much just as awkward as he was on
Did
the
he
show.
did he look like he just wanted to get out of there?
Yeah, he did not want to talk to me,
That's
and I
awesome.
just kind of lingered as long as I could and asked him to sign my sandwich.
Wow. Actually, so it's funny because I ran into Zach Woods, Jared, like a block away from our office.
Really?
I didn't talk to him. I just saw him like he was sort of like staring at a wall or down the floor of the wall, like
That sounds
just
like
randomly,
Jared.
randomly in the sidewalk, and I was like, Jared. And then like I didn't really want to bother him because he seemed really focused on whatever he was staring at, so I just walked off. But
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
we go.
No, Thomas
Our
Middleditch,
claim to fame,
not
our
interested
brush to
in
fame.
me.
Cool story, bro.
Not really that cool. I know. Sorry.
All right, probably
story.
time
Let's
to
wrap it up.
wrap it up.
All right, if you liked anything you saw or heard here, check it out on CNET. Our podcast is also available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, FeedBurner, and Google Play Music. See y'all tomorrow.
Thanks, everybody.